list here of a few of the things. The first one is, you were the lead developer on Innistrad, is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how that process went? It's considered one of the most popular sets recently. The limited format got rave reviews from beginning to end. I mean, I know it was either my favorite or my second favorite. I'm sure you hear that a lot. A lot of people loved it. Can you kind of talk us to a little bit about
what's your second favorite? Is it Ravnica?
It's Rise of the Eldrazi.
Oh, Rise, yeah.
Yeah.
That was awesome too. That was Matt Place was the lead developer.
He was, okay.
So so the way it works is design hands over the initial design. And it has a view of this is going to be horror.
Yes.
And there's going to be humans, which are green-white, and they're going to be vampires that are black-red, and zombies that are black-blue. So they hand those over, and they say how they want each one to play.
Okay.
But they don't necessarily play quite that way. The black-red deck's supposed to be aggressive, but it was an attrition deck where you just kill all your opponent's guys and win with a few fatties.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, well, they have a great idea of how this. I see what they're trying to accomplish, but they're not doing it.
Okay.
So you kind of want to do that, and then you want to add a little depth. Like we wanted humans to tie to spirits, and Adam Lee, who's a creative person, he works in creative, he was on the development team. Because we have a diverse team.
That's an interesting voice to have in your ear for when you're doing that.
Right, because we definitely wanted it to keep the horror feel. And so I asked, how can you tie the human deck and the spirit deck together? And he was like, well, the human dies, he creates a spirit.
It's a ghost.
And I was like, duh. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, the Doom Traveler, like that captures that whole dynamic in one very simple card.
Right, and creative is the sort of this third branch of this all.
Yes.
And we wanted vampires, and I was like, they really need something to tie them together. In addition to changing the cards so they're not attrition, they need an aggressive reward.
Okay.
And asked for what is a piece of text we could put on here. And Doug Beyer, who's also in creative.
He's a creative guy,
and used to write a weekly article, Taste the Flavor.
Savor the flavor.
Savor the flavor, yes. Savor the flavor, yes. Very yummy article.
Yeah.
I missed it. And he came up with, well, the Slith would be perfect for the vampire.
Taking blood, growing stronger as you attack,
So we felt those, and then it's like, oh, well, blue-green was supposed to be some sort of reward for filling up your graveyard.
Okay.
But it didn't play that way because the blue zombies could eat out of either graveyard at the time. And they didn't have a self-milling creatures. They didn't have creatures then. So we wanted to, I thought it was important that you could only take out of your own graveyard as a reward.
Oh, okay.
If you could eat out of my graveyard, and I'm playing a deck that's trying to fill up my graveyard, it's just going to be a dumb game.
I see,
I'm going to be like, I put some creatures in, you're going to be like, thanks, I ate them.
Right.
And it doesn't have a lot of replay value. So it's like, oh, how can we make this work? And I talked to various people, and Aaron had a great idea of, well, how about a guy enters the battlefield and mills you?
Okay.
And some people hated those cards. So I was like, well, this is really going to be something to figure out what you're going to do with.
Yes, for sure.
And so we kind of try and figure out, like, what are these decks going to be? And the blue-green deck was actually so hard that we barely got it drafted at all. It's very hard.
Is that right?
I managed to draft it once, but I had Sever the Bloodline in my deck. And I was like, I don't know if it works or not. I'm probably misbuilding it. But you definitely can make it work with some rares. I had the rare guy who mills you 2 cards per turn. And there's a
Splinter Fright.
Splinter Fright, yes. Yeah. So I had some rares and it worked. And it was like, maybe someone else can figure out. But I knew this would be good because if I couldn't get it to work right away, the tools are probably there. I added a Gnaw to the Bone.
Which ended up being a card that was overlooked early and quite popular late in the format.
Right, because so a long time ago in Ice Age Alliances was the first time I qualified.
That was a while ago.
Yes. For the first time I qualified, I played Necropotence, but the first PTQ I went to, I played Blue-Red Browse Digger.
Okay.
And Browse is a card where you look at some cards and you put one in your hand and exile the rest, and the Soldavi Digger put cards back into your deck.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, okay, I want to create kind of a, if there's self-milling and there's flashback, you need, in the end, to have a way of not decking yourself.
Yes.
So while it might, I hope it feels organic, but the green-blue flashback card, which, or I guess it's
Memory's Journey.
Right. Was planted there to enable this whole thing. Where you can feel like, oh, yeah. Now,
and it's like a safety valve as well for milling yourself on accident, like, because if you get a little too much momentum going.
Or you can do it on purpose.
Yes, which is something that happened in that format a little bit later. after people kind of got to, dig around in there and figure out what was going on. And I think that was one of the things that people really liked about it. And I also wanted to ask you about as well, which are these build around me uncommons.
Right, so we like having the obvious things to draft, which you can draft your first time, but then, you don't just want to be playing only tribal decks all day. You have to have something else. So if you look at that, the allied ones were the things that hit the tropes that Mark Rosewater wanted. And the enemy colored ones were more difficult to build, and we're like, oh, what do you do with these cards? And try and like
not obvious at all.
Right, and try and figure out. There's the Burning Vengeance deck. Well, that one's a little more obvious than the blue-green deck, unless you can all shove them together.
Okay.
It was like, okay, so I want flashback cards, and then there's this Runic Repetition, which gets an exiled flashback card back to your hand. It first looks like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
Then you try it, and it's kind of like, this is crummy.
Yeah.
But then you're like, oh, maybe if I build a whole deck around it, it'll pay off.
And if you committed to that, you could do it.
You
could. I thought that was great. I wanted to talk to you about a couple of the rares as well from that set. Some of them have seen.
Now remember, I don't know the names because we have playtest
names.
No
worries. I will translate them for you. I'll say the name so that the listeners can know, and then the viewers.
I'll often figure it out when you say it.
Yeah. So one of them that I particularly liked in Limited, and also saw some constructed play and a lot of like sort of tier 2 constructed play, like maybe not here at these tables with the hardcores, but like at the kitchen tables and really anywhere in between, was Bloodline Keeper.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk to you about that because one of the things that I really appreciated about Bloodline Keeper is that when you played it in constructed, it was just sweet, right? It was just a really nice, like a rare that people liked, a vampire. When you played it in limited, though, it had a dramatic effect on the board in the sense that it was powerful, it demanded attention, it was kind of tough to kill. But the thing I really appreciated about it is that it didn't just hit you over the head. It wasn't like, here's a Grave Titan, go.
Right, if you saved your kill card for it and removed it, then you were fine. And we purposely put in a little bit of expensive removal so drafters wouldn't always first pick it.
Yeah.
Because if every removal is a first pick card, then it's just who opened the removal has the removal. There's no skill as to when you're going to take it.
Right.
But if you what we call clunky removal, then you can get some passed to you, and you have to decide if you even want it as your second or third pick.
Okay.
The Bloodline Keeper, we were debating actually making it 5 mana.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because it's really strong and limited. It was like, do we want it to be this strong? But so we also we knew vampires would be popular at FNM, and I can't remember who it was. It may have been Dave Gustin. Someone did pretty well, not necessarily the single best deck, not as good as like Solar Flare and Red Green Ramp, but pretty well with a vampire deck. And it was like, oh, this is probably at least good enough to play in FNM, maybe better, because we're going to be wrong. Sometimes we miss a card.
Okay.
We're like, okay. So we were contemplating adding a mana to it, but it was like, well, it seems to make a pretty sweet FNM level deck.
Yeah, I think so too.
And, well, 1 mana, I mean, it is frustrating to lose to, but usually you can get rid of it. You got to turn to kill it.
Yeah. One more question, and then we're going to let you go because we got to go to a break.
Yeah.
Legacy unbannings.
Legacy
you have some word into this, I'm told.
Yes.
We just saw Lantax unbanned.
Absolutely.
Are there other cards on the Legacy list that, like, do you keep like kind of a list of things that are like, does this still need to be? And, maybe you guys try out a few things or kind of keep an eye on the meta. Like, how aggressive are you towards trying to adjust that list on unbannings?
Right. So last year was the first year, I think, in a while that we didn't unban. We banned Mental Misstep, and we weren't sure what to unban at the same time.
Okay.
But most years we do unban a card. And we sort of have, some cards we'd like to unban, partially because, so Lantex, we didn't unban it for a number of years because it was, so you play Jundin Standard, your cards leave Standard, and let's say you didn't want to play Extended because it will rotate again.
Sure.
And you're like, what's a non-rotating format? Legacy.
Okay.
And we didn't want to be so powerful that you couldn't play your Jund deck.
Right.
But now we're like, well, maybe if it's not strong enough for that, you could always play Modern. Let's make Legacy for the Legacy players.
Okay.
And we know Legacy players want to try Lantex.
And they want the hardcore, the most potent, crazy old stuff that you can get their hands on.
We kind of have this rule that we'll just unban cards every year, and maybe, like, ideally you get, like, as far as Necropotence,
Yeah, I know. I know you. I know that's where you're going.
Right?
And then if you can do that, then you can
maybe Chris McCool will come back when he sees.
You know, he's playing in the GP right now.
Oh, he is. So he's playing Legacy.
He's playing Legacy. Yep.
Well, kudos to him.
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely do think about it. We look at the metagame, and we're like, you know, there's not a ton of white and slower decks going on, so let's give them another card.
Okay.
But yeah, we try and give a card a year.
All right. Well, Eric, I want to thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. I could talk to you for hours, but we need to go to a break. So we're going to be back for the next round, round 8 or 7, whichever one it is, in just a little bit.